Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar of how to buy a home in The Hague. Can everyone hear me and see me clearly? Just before I start, just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Yes, okay, great. Thanks a lot. If you have any issues at any time, just drop it in the chat. And my colleague Rafaela will be on chat support today, so she'll be able to help you out. In case you have any questions based on the presentation, please pop those in the Q&A so we can make sure that we don't miss any of your questions. Great. With that being said, let's start today. So my name is Katie. I am originally from Cyprus, but I have Cypriot and English roots. I was born and raised in Cyprus, though, and I have moved in Rotterdam around 3 years ago, almost. And I have to say that even though I've lived in a few countries before this, I never felt more familiar in this kind of country. Rotterdam, also The Hague, and in general, the Netherlands. I work mostly in the Rotterdam and The Hague region. So if you do decide to start working with us, I'll probably be the person who will be supporting you. Now, enough about me. Let's get to know you a little bit more. I'm just going to pop a poll. If you're kind enough, you can just answer those questions. I'm just interested to know a little bit more about in what phase you are. Are you looking to buy a house? Have you made an offer? What made you buy? Is it because you want to invest in this country? Or yeah, a lot of people choose the rent is too high, which is becoming more and more common. So just to know a little bit more, thanks a lot for popping the answers there. Okay, I see most of you, wow, guys, it's like 60% of you, it's because the rents are too high. Oh my God, that's even going higher now. So yeah, I definitely understand and can empathize with that. Great, I see some more coming in. I'll just give some more seconds. There's a lot of you, a big portion of you also would like to settle in the Netherlands. So that's good news, guys. I guess you also feel like you found your way away from home. And you would also like to build up equity. Yeah, that makes total sense. Thanks a lot, guys, for the answers. Let me just move forward. So we have a motto in the company: greatness is achieved in the agency of others. What do we mean by that? Let me just introduce you to the rest of the team. We have Giovanna, Ludo, Rafaela, Philip, Rick, and Ellen as the core members of our buying team. And I do need to say to you that even though you have one person of contact, all these people will be looking behind your files and working for your benefit. So just good for you to know, we do have a very good team that works well together. So just a little bit about us. We're not real estate agents. What do we mean by that? We help with buying and renting, of course. We don't charge a commission, which is very common here in the Netherlands. We only charge a fixed fee. We'll talk about that later on. We definitely know what it's like to settle in a new country. 95% of our company is consisted by expats, internationals. So we can definitely empathize with what you're going through right now. And of course, what would be our added value? Well, selling agents do take offers from Expat Housing Network a little bit more seriously. We've been in the business for around 6 years now. So we have made our good amount of connections and networks in different cities around the Netherlands. Sometimes it is possible to book viewings when it's not longer possible for you to do that. That is because an agent will always prioritize someone who is represented, and especially if that company has a good fame, then they'll definitely prioritize those people for viewings. We support by reviewing the Dutch legal and property documents. I said before, 95% of us are internationals, but we do have a good portion of Dutch people in our company. So whether there's whether there are any Dutch legal documents or Dutch reviews or anything like that, then again, we always work as a team, and you have the native speakers that will always double check and triple check everything before we come back to you with more information. We help define the market value through market data, so we won't be just sharing any kind of numbers randomly out there. We really do our research, and we do use figures, data, and statistics to come to you with results. And we are also very open about that. So in that way, we like to look at it like we offer a little bit of education in that section as well. We will inform you about the rules and regulations of the property that you're looking at, and we will definitely make sure you don't make the same mistakes that we did when we were trying to buy a home here. A little bit about today. So of course, we're going to talk about some market information and news. I will talk a little bit more about what drives the market and what doesn't, of course. A little bit about savings and what kind of savings you should have prepared before you enter the buying process. I'll give you some tips about offers and winning the market, and I'll talk a little bit more about the timeline, so you know what to expect and what kind of steps you're going to need to follow. Before we go forward, just pop in the chat. This is not a poll, just a chat. In which part of the process are you? Are you in the orientation part, the search part, viewing, or have you already submitted an offer? I hope no one here already submitted an offer, and then they don't have a representation. So if you do, please let us know directly. But I'll be interested to know, have you viewed any houses? What is exactly your stage? So I see a lot of you orientation and searching. So quite initial steps in viewing. So that's nice. A few of you are a little bit more active, but we have most of you in the orientation phase. So great, guys, you're in the right place. We're going to share a lot of information about orientation today. Any questions, pop them in the Q&A. My colleague Rafaela will pick up on them. Thanks a lot for your answers. So just to talk for some regarding some market information. So here you see the average selling price in the Netherlands from 2005 up to 2022. We see that it is quite a healthy increasing index line. And we see that the average price up to Q1 2022 is 426,000. A little bit more specific numbers regarding The Hague. So we see here that the houses sold in Q1 were 1,516. That's a little bit less from last year and also less than last quarter. Houses for sale were 970 listings. That is minus 70% from 7% from last year, but it is plus 7% from last quarter. So there's a little bit of an increase there. The average price per price per property is 437, and that is an increase of almost 12% from last year. Although we do see that it is 2.5 less than last quarter, we see that in the general index, to put it that way, we see that the prices keep rising. The same goes for the average price per square meter. We see here 4,159. The plus 815% is definitely a typo. It's only 15.3% from last year and minus 0.6 from last quarter. Regarding sales times, we have 26 days, which is pretty much how it was last quarter. So yeah, average time, it is quite quick, and there are times that is quicker as well. So do keep in mind, be prepared, make sure you are aware of the next steps, because once you get an offer accepted, everything will move very, very quick. Okay, so let's talk about market drivers. The first thing, of course, that will influence the market will be what kind of fiscal benefits the government has. One of them at the moment is the tax exemption. That means that if you buy a property that is less than 400,000, and it's the first time you're buying a home in the Netherlands, and you're also younger than 35 excluded, so younger than 34 and lower, then it means that you'll be exempt for paying the 2% transfer tax, which is a really nice discount. So that is definitely something that motivates people to get in the market. At the moment, we also have the interest rebate, which means that at the end of the year, you can claim your interest rate on the mortgage back. So it's tax deductible, deductible, and that's definitely a nice discount to have. We also don't have any kind of capital gains when you sell the property here in the Netherlands. There are some conversations about adding some taxes on that, on the capital gains, but that is projected to happen around maybe 2025. And of course, there's no definite and concrete plan at the moment. Another fiscal benefit we have is the tax-free parent donation. Last year and this year, it's up to 100,000 free if you're donating to your child with the purpose for them to buy a home. From next year, 2023, that will be deducted to around 30,000, and from 2024, that will not longer be possible. So if you're any type of situation like that, make sure that you try and get that house this year, so you don't lose this kind of benefit. Otherwise, the parents will be taxed on the gift that they'll give to the buyer. Also, low interest rates. I know that lately the interest rates have been rising and rising, but to be honest, we are still quite considerably low in comparison to other years. And especially last year was the all-time lower interest rates in the Netherlands. Of course, when it's cheap to borrow money, then of course people are much more motivated to borrow that money, commit to such a loan, and buy a house. High rents. A lot of you understand that pain. It is actually a lot of times that if you're better off with a mortgage because you end up paying less on your monthly fee. Plus you'll be buying, let's say, a stone of your house every month. Whereas in the rent, it's probably going to be a little bit higher. And then it is basically money down the drain. I am not saying renting is bad. It really depends on your specific situation. But if you're planning to stay for the next few years, then it will be best to invest in a property and then sell it when it's time to leave. And then you also leave with a little bit of a profit. And one more thing that is definitely an influence in any market is supply and demand. So at the moment in the Netherlands, the supply is really, really low and the demand is really, really high, which is why we still see that the prices are still increasing. There are not enough houses to reach the demand. And as long as the balance is like that, the prices will keep rising. I hope everything was clear so far. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about some regulations. So we have the self-occupancy clause. This is valid since 2022. And what it means that if you buy a house that has a WOZ value up to 355, WOZ value is not the same as the market value, by the way. WOZ value is only used to calculate your taxes. And if the property you're buying has a WOZ value up to 355, then it will include a permanent self-occupancy clause, which means that you will not be able to rent it. The reason they have this is because if you're not able to buy a house and rent it, then it means that investors have no interest in it. So it automatically removes, it blocks investors from competing with average buyers within those lower range properties. And then it gives a lot more room for the buyer to be able to compete on a healthy level with someone who is also an average buyer. Don't get me wrong, the competition is still there for sure, but it's just that you won't be competing with the big sharks, let's say. Moving forward, in February 2022, there was an article that there's still a 20% increase in house prices compared to a year earlier. That is based on CBS, the Central Bureau of Statistics. And what that means is that we still see prices continue to growing in 2022, regardless of what is happening around us. And that also confirms that the price index has also been on the rise ever since their very low in 2013. Last thing, interest rates to rise. We have seen this coming in action. It was predicted that inflation could be temporary and generally low interest rates with a slight rise. There are some events that are happening on a micro and micro scale that affects the interest rates, but it's still believed that the interest rate will become a lot more stable and perhaps stop rising. For that, though, we will need to wait and see. So let's talk a little bit about savings. What do you think you need in savings before you start? So obviously you'll need some money for service costs, and then perhaps some money so you'll be able to bid on your offers. But I'm just curious to know what kind of amounts do you have in mind? Like, what kind of savings do you think you'll need to have before you start buying? You can pop your answers in the chat, and I'll be able to see them there. So what kind of savings do you think you need before you start with your buying process? You can just answer in the chat. It's not a poll. Okay, I see Natasha saying 20K, 50K, 25K. Okay. Okay. 15 to 20. Okay, so there's a little bit of a common agreement. Some people like to be a little bit on the higher end. Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for your answers. The right answer there, by the way, is the more the better, because it will allow you to be very flexible. But let's just talk a little bit more detailed about it. So these are the service costs that you should expect to pay. I'll just go through them. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. So as we see, some fees are also tax deductible, which means you receive you receive a discount at the end of the year again. Anything that is related to the mortgage is tax deductible, but nevertheless, you will need to have the money to pay it at that time. So 2% of the purchase price to whoever will be paying the transfer tax. We don't know that number, of course. It really depends on how much the purchase price would be. So make sure that if you are paying the transfer tax, you're calculating 2% of what you're willing to spend on the property, so you can cover the tax as well. Regarding the notary, you will have the mortgage deed, which could be anything between 600 to 1,100, and same goes for the transfer deed. That really depends on the area and the location, let's say the city that you're going to choose to do it in. Den Haag, because it is quite a main city for real estate, those prices tend to be a little bit higher, so it will be towards the higher end. For the bank or the mortgage broker, depending on which side you go, the bank will charge something around 1,500 euros. And then the mortgage broker, anything between that up to 3,400. So depending on which party you choose, then you'll be able to see what kind of fees they have. So a typical real estate agent will cost you 1 to 2% of the purchase price. EHN charges a fixed price, so you will only need to calculate the fixed price of the package you choose. An appraiser will cost you anything between 650 and 800 euros. It really depends on the size of the house and whether you want to add any renovation costs or not. A technical inspector will usually cost around 435 euros. An interpreter could cost around 300 to 350. Sometimes if the language that is required is very specific, then that can also be higher. So keep that in mind. And then you also have the bank guarantee, which means that the bank will cover the 10% deposit that you will need to pay as part of the purchase price. But you will need to pay the bank an extra around 250 euros for that service. And then you also have the NHG, that is a national mortgage guarantee. If you are eligible for it, I do advise to get that. It is 0.6% of the mortgage amount, but it does give you a better interest rate, and it does give you a better layer of protection regarding the property. So overall, you see that if you're not paying the transfer tax, then you will need around 10,000 euros, let's say, on an average, to cover the service costs. So that's 2 to 3% of the purchase price usually. And if you are liable to pay the transfer tax, then you would be expected to pay around 5 to 6% of the purchase price, depending what the final purchase price would be. So I hope that is clear. Those are service costs. And now moving forward, I'm just going to talk for a few tips about how to win the current market. What is important to pay attention to is the value. This is where the rest of the savings will come useful, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and explain this. So let's say that this property has an asking price of 395. So hypothetically, we see that the asking price is 395. We suppose that the market value is 415. We have done the research. We have come down to that price, let's say. And then we have the purchase price, potential purchase price, that is 435. Now, it's very important to compare these numbers. So if you see the asking price versus the purchase price, there's a 40K difference. That's a 10% above the asking price. In reality, though, what you're paying is the value versus the purchase price, right? So the difference between those two numbers is 20K, therefore not even 5%, okay? So the bank will give you 100% of the value of the house, okay? So that is the number that we should be looking at. Of course, they will give you 100% of the value of the house if your mortgage limit is also there, right? So that is a little bit common sense. You can't borrow more than you are actually allowed, but they will only give you the value of the house. So if the value of your house is 300 and you bought at 340, then the bank will give you only 300, even though your mortgage limit could be 1 million. Okay, so the market value is the number that it will define what kind of offer you make. The asking price that you see on Funda does not reflect the value of the house. Well, most of the times. The reason for that is agents choose to put that the asking price at least 10 to 15% below the market value. The reason they do that is because it attracts a lot of attention. It's an attractive price. The more attention it has, the higher the purchase price ends up being. Therefore, the higher the commission and they pay out for the sale of the property. Okay, so it's important to understand the market value. If you are looking to borrow around 400 from the bank, don't start looking for asking prices that are at 400. Okay, look below that. So 325, 350, 360, 370 max. If you go higher than that, you will probably end up being out of your budget. Okay. Let's just take this example to also make it clear. I just want to avoid making any kind of indication that there's a percentage that you should do above the price. There's a lot of people out there who say that, yeah, if you bet about between 10 and 20% above the asking price, then you have a good offer. Yes, if the asking price is around 10 to 15% below the value, then that makes sense. But imagine that the asking price is the value. If you add another 20% on top of that, I can guarantee you that in most cases, you'll be buying very expensive. Okay, so again, the asking price is not an indication. Look at this. This asking price is 375. It is the same house. It's just a different asking price. The market value remains at 415. It is the same house. And the purchase price also remains the same, 335. Now, the difference between the asking price and the purchase price is now 60K. That's 16%. However, the difference between the market value and the purchase price remains the same. So again, market value is the key number, okay? I hope this is clear. And again, if you want to spend a certain amount of money, start looking 10 to 15% below on asking prices on that. Now, second tip, a winning offer. Of course, a good price is one of the most important aspects of an offer, but it is not always the highest price, right? So there are a lot of conditions you can add to your offer that can offer security to the seller. One of those conditions could be the financing clause. The financing clause is the most important clause that you can have. If you have that clause, what it means is that you basically say, hey, okay, if something goes wrong with my mortgage later, then I will still be able to pull out of this offer without being liable for any fines. Okay, so it protects you, but it gives insecurity to the seller. The other way around, if you choose not to have the financing clause and then something goes wrong with your mortgage and you can't go forward with the purchase of the house, then you will still be liable to pay a 10% fine. Okay, so it is a very powerful clause, but it is a very risky one as well. So in that case, you always need to have the green light from your mortgage advisor, whether it's okay to remove the financing clause or not. Okay, so that is one of the ways you can offer security to the seller. And I can guarantee you, if a selling agent has two offers, one at 350 with a financing clause and one at 345 without, they will go with the one without. So again, a good price is not always the highest price. Another thing would be offer the least amount of hassle. So if it's really important for the seller to leave all the furniture behind because they're moving in another country, and that is a deal breaker for them, then try to be a little bit understanding on that, right? So you definitely don't want to lose your dream house just because some furniture will be left behind. So try to offer the least amount of hassle. If they also want to move out, they already let you know at the viewing, we want to move out in January because we will only have a new house at that point. Don't try to make them move out in September, for example, except if you have something really, really, really good to offer. So try to make it as easy as possible. Try to understand the seller as well. Try to understand what their needs are, and formulate and structure your offer in a way that it will, not only the price will be appealing, but anything else you're offering with it. Also, what is also nice to do is offering a personal touch. So what we do is usually we attach a little client profile. The most important reason we do that is because it's also very nice for the selling agent to remember which person was at the viewing and who is making the offer. A lot of people view, don't expect that they'll remember you. So it's nice for them to also refresh their memory. And also a lot of times the owners want to have an idea of who they're selling to. So altogether, all these things, take them into consideration and make sure that you structure your offers like that. Then you'll have more chances of one getting accepted. Number 3, due diligence. So here we have 2 experts. One is the technical inspector. This is the person that will come and evaluate the technical state of the property. And then the other one is the appraiser. This is the person that will come and generate a report so the value of the house can be certified. Before I talk a little bit about these experts, I just want to ask you, when do you think you should book these experts? Is it before an offer gets accepted or after an offer gets accepted? So the person who will technically inspect the house and the person who will evaluate it. Do you believe they need to come before or after the offer is accepted? You can pop your answers in the chat. I see Lisa says before, Eric says before. Okay, I'm just gonna leave a few seconds for other people to reply as well. I'm really interested. Okay, after, I see a lot of after coming. Okay, after. There's a 50-50 fight there. Before or after. Okay, great, guys. Thanks a lot for your answers. And not to keep you in suspense, the sweet spot would be right after the offer is accepted. If you're asking me, ideally it would be lovely for those experts to come before an offer gets accepted. But there's a few things that we need to consider. First of all, the viewings it is quite an intensive period, so there's usually no time for experts to come and do that job. But most importantly, imagine you bring the technical inspect. For some reason, there's time, and then you can do this. The selling agent allows it. Okay, so you bring the technical inspector, that's a 450 euros, and then you bring the appraiser, that would be, let's say, 800 euros on an average. It can be a little bit cheaper. So then you're already paying 1,250 euros, and then you make an offer, and then it doesn't get accepted. So it means that you paid all that money for basically nothing. So the first thing to do after the offer is accepted is to directly book those experts. Those are the experts that need to go and visit the property as soon as possible. The appraiser report will be required for your mortgage to get approved. So the mortgage cannot start if we don't have that report. And the sooner we do everything, the sooner we can sign, and the sooner you can start your mortgage application. As you see here, the offer gets accepted. You have around 1.5 weeks to sign the contract. Preferably, we do that quicker, depending on the timeline, of course. The experts also come here. Once you sign the purchase agreement, you have a 3 days cooling off period, you as a buyer, which means that if you change your mind, you can pull out. So let's say for some reason the technical inspection report is delayed, and then it comes out with 40,000 damages, then of course you're still in your 3 days cooling off period, and you can pull out. So yeah, that it is about the experts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline so I can give a little bit of an idea and context in the steps. So you have the searching part, of course. Once you find a property that you want to make an offer, then that is the offer part. If you have an agent, your agent will support you in preparing the property document reviews, the price analysis to come to the market value, prepping the offers, talking with the agent. So of course, that is a step in between. But then you submit the offer. If an offer gets accepted, then of course, the next thing to do is to have the technical inspection and appraiser. Soon after the signing of the purchase contract comes, that's within perhaps the same or the week after. Once your contract is signed, then your mortgage application immediately starts, and that's sort of where the cooling off period is as well. So they happen at the same time, let's say. Once the mortgage takes usually 2 to 4 weeks for it to get accepted. Well, once the mortgage is accepted, then you receive a statement of completion from the notary. This will be a final note with all the expenses that you have occurred so far. So your mortgage advisor's fee will be there, your taxes will be there, the mortgage amount will be there, your agent service fee will be there. Like the only thing you need to pay before that date would be the technical inspection and the appraiser. The rest of the expenses are paid at the day you become the owner. And then, of course, you have the last day, the transfer date. That is the day where you become the owner. What happens is that first you go to the property to visit it, inspect it, make sure that there are no damages or anything like that. And then you move to the notary's office to sign the legal documents that make you the owner. And of course, get your keys handed over. We also have a little bit of a ending liability term. So of course, within the first 2 months, if there's anything that you need support with, or something is different in the house unexpected, you can always reach out to us for support. The way we work is in 2 packages. We also have the new build package. I'm not going to talk about this today, but it is for properties that are being built or haven't been built yet. If you're interested, make sure to sign up for the webinar that we have, and we'll share more information about that there, since it is a little bit of a different approach and a different process. For the existing properties, we have the smart package and the complete package. The smart package is for the independent person. So let's say for people who like to do things on their own, they have lived for a few months in the Netherlands or a few years. They have perhaps experience in buying a home, maybe in another country. and they're not intimidated on, going at a viewing themselves. This is an online package. And then we have the complete package where it becomes more physical. So we are actually physically there every step of the way. You don't need to make the viewings yourself. You just send the link to us. We schedule the viewing for you. We attend the viewing with you. We attend the expert meeting, so the inspector and the notary. And the most important is that we offer the transfer support, which means that we're there with you on the last day at the property and at the notary's office. You see, we have a difference in prices. What's important to know is that we only ask 10% to be paid of each package. So $2.99 for the smart package and $3.99 for the complete. And then the rest of the invoice, we only request to be paid here. So on the last day of your transfer, you will see the invoice here, but you'll be required to pay it here. That means that we have a no cure, no pay system, which means that if for any reason you don't secure a home with us, or you decide to stop the process, or you decide to, I don't know, move out of the country, then of course you're not liable to pay the rest of the invoice. The only commitment you have with us is the 10% to compensate a little bit for our work in the beginning. And then the rest is only requested once you have secured a home with us. If you want to know more about the packages, please feel free to book an intake with us, and we'll have a one-on-one, talk a little bit more specifically about your situation, and talk about the packages if you have any questions. I'll move forward to the Q&A. I don't know, Rafaela, do we have any questions?
Hello, Katie.
Hi.
Very nice presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We have a few questions here. So I try to reply some of them, but I also would like you to help me with some.
Perfect. Let's go ahead.
So we have one question from Vipin. Is that right time, or should we wait more time to buy a property?
That is always a very good question. It's more like a to be or not to be. If you're asking me, from our day-to-day experience, we definitely see that the market is slowing down. A big reason of why is because the interest rates keep, they have stabilized a little bit, but they're still getting higher and higher, which results to people losing a significant amount of what they can borrow. Therefore, they can't move forward with the property anymore. Or they need to adjust to something that they don't want, and they choose to wait. Timing wise, I find that there are a lot of opportunities in the market right now because the competition is a little bit less. But of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't see what will happen in the next 2 to 3 years. What we see, and we can say with confidence right now, is that there's definitely a switch in the market that was expected anyway, because last year, with the interest rates being so low, I mean, who could have not expected that type of increase? Interest rates are almost 3 times higher this year. Who could have not expected the market slowing down? And the other thing to also pay attention is that the price increases are still, the properties in the Netherlands are still gaining value from a year-to-year basis. So the increase is still there. The competition is getting a little bit lower. So if you do decide that this is the right time for you to buy, like, don't buy if you want to sell the property for a year. That's just not advisable. Buy a property if you're intending to hold it for at least the next 5 to 7 years. So then if something goes wrong, there's enough time for the market to recover, and then you'll be able to leave your investment with a profit, hopefully. What else I wanted to say? Because last year was very competitive, I still see sometimes in sales boards that some people still use the mentality of last year and go and bid 20 to 25 to even 30% on the asking price. As I made a point before, it's really important what the value is. So definitely don't do such an increase without understanding the value first. I hope that gives you a food for thought to think whether this is the right time for you to buy or not. But there are generally good opportunities at the moment, that's for sure.
Thank you, Katie. I have another question from Mario. Can the difference between the asking price and the actual price you might pay be included as part of the mortgage?
Usually this is not possible. I'm not sure whether there are any different requirements or specific cases. The best thing to do there is to talk to a mortgage advisor. We do have a variety of recommendations for the Hague and in general the southern region of the Netherlands. If you do want a mortgage recommendation, you can just pop your email, send it directly to Rafaela in the chat. And then I'll definitely make sure to send you some recommendations there. Usually the difference will not be covered, but it doesn't harm to double check that with the mortgage guy.
Thank you, Katie. I have another question, but it's regarding mortgage. I don't know if it's possible for us to reply this one. But the question is, do you know if I take a mortgage for not ready apartment under construction, can I decrease mortgage monthly payment and on how much percent?
Sorry, read the last sentence only, that I didn't hear very well.
And in how much the mortgage can be decreased?
Sorry, can you repeat the whole question just to make sure I got it right? Sorry, my fault.
Do you know if I take mortgage for not ready apartments, for new builds, can I decrease mortgage monthly payment?
I don't think that will be possible. This is a very specific related mortgage question. Again, best to check with the mortgage advisor. But in general, when you have a mortgage, whether it's on existing or non-existing property, you will have a set of amount of years. This is usually 30, and then you will sign an agreement with the bank. And you will be able to choose what type of mortgage. There are different type of mortgage. First mortgages that pay off the interest, or first mortgages that build up equity. You will see what is best for you. But once you have agreed to a monthly payment, you will not be able to, in most cases, minimize that, because it will be set on the amount that you borrow and the amount of years that you plan to pay out. So it is possible to pay more if you want, but I don't think it will be possible to pay less than that. And also important to know, for the new builds, the mortgage will be a little bit different. But those are specific things that are related to the new build. The percentage, I am guessing you mean the percentage of the interest rate. Usually you will have a 10-year fixed interest rate, or 20, depending on what kind of deal you have. Most of the times it's 10. And after the 10 years, you will have another 20-year left to pay off your mortgage. Within those 20 years, the interest rate will be adjusted based on the market. So it's not something fixed it's fixed for a certain amount of time. I hope that answers the question.
That was very helpful, Katie. I have another question about new builds from Aditi. New builds are apartments under construction or would be constructed. How to reach out to them and buy them?
Okay. The first thing there is no other way into getting into new builds if you don't sign up on the project page. There are pages, even Funda has this service where you can filter the new build projects. You will see what is available, what is not, and you can sign up. Funda will also allow you to sign up on those new builds, but please make sure that you sign up on the project website as well. Once you have done that, you can start contacting the developers or the selling agents. You will find the information in the project website, or you will have an online sort of like hub where you can interact with the representatives. And then what happens is that everyone signs up, and then depending on when you signed up, how quick you signed up, what kind of preferences you have, the selling parts start to contact you based on those priorities. So It is a little bit of a waiting period there, but the only way to get in them is to directly register through their systems. If you need any support with new builds, just make sure you book an intake with us, and we'll be more than happy to explain those steps in detail.
Thank you. I'm just checking here because there's a lot of questions. Yeah, I think you already replied this one, how to know about the new projects. There is another question from Natasha. Also, can you please repeat one more time how exactly the bank determines the market value that they approve the loan for?
Yeah, it is not the bank that will determine that. It is a third party, the appraiser, and yeah, they are certified to do that. They need to be certified. What they do is they go at the property, take a few pictures, look at the quality of the finishing, look at certain characteristics. Then they go back in their office to generate the report. They need to take examples from the same neighborhood with properties that can be compared. So same size, same age, same finishing, outdoor space, indoor space, parking. There are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. They make certain calculations, and then they come down to a number. That number needs to be approved by the Appraisal Association, NWWI is called. And then once that approval comes through, the document is submitted to the bank, and the bank accepts that. So it's a third party that will evaluate the property. And because you only have that appraiser after you have an offer accepted, what your agent will do in preparation is a similar exercise to understand the market range, market value range that the property can be. The definite number, though, will only come once the report is generated.
Thank you. I have another question from Yuji. If I had to leave Netherlands after 2-3 years of purchase of the house, will it be a good idea to still rent it out and wait a few years later to sell it?
Yeah, that would definitely, you will need to look at what the current market is. I mean, if you're intending to come back, then there's no reason to sell it, and definitely renting it out will be an option. But because there are certain restrictions in the Netherlands regarding renting, not only from the mortgage point of view, not from your mortgage lender only, but also from government regulations, just make sure that if that is in your plan, then you will be able to rent out the property in those few years that you'll be out. So just make sure you tell your agent that is like a requirement for you, and then they'll check every property if that is possible to do or not.
Thank you, Katie. I believe one of the attendees has the hand raised. Can you check that?
I can't see anything from here, guys. If anyone has their hand raised, can you just type in the chat so we can see, because I don't see any signs here. Eric, is Eric the person who is raising the hand?
Eric.
Yes, okay, but I don't see it anywhere, so I'm not very sure how to.
Exactly, I cannot see it either. So if you can just put the question in the chat, that would help.
Yeah, it is more a difficult question. Yeah, I really can't see how I can. Let me see.
Otherwise, we can book an intake afterwards if you want, Eric. That would be ideal, I think.
Yeah, Eric, I am sorry, but because this is a structured webinar, there's no way for me to sort of like change anything right now. So either just take some time to type your questions until I go over a few, or just book an intake together. Let's just have an intake together as soon as possible so we can go through your question. I am really, really sorry. I really don't know how to be able to give you the permission to speak or something, but we'll definitely look into that for sure. So yeah, sorry, Eric. So we'll move forward with another question, and intake seems the best. Great. So I'll see you there. Rafaela, please feel free to go forward.
So we have another question from Hossam. In which exact condition it's not possible to rent the unity?
Yeah, several conditions. When you have a mortgage, it is not an option for you to rent the property out without having been in certain situations. One of them would be that you're leaving the country. So in that case, you're allowed to rent it under the vacancy law, that a house cannot be empty for 6 months or more in the Netherlands. So in that case, you'll be able to rent it out, but you'll need permission from the mortgage lender. And of course, there are also limitations there. I believe the maximum you can do it is 12 months, except if there's anything more specific to your situation. Another restriction could be the self-occupancy clause that I mentioned before. Any property that is less than 355 in the WOZ value will not be able to rent it out, except if, again, you can use the vacancy law if you're leaving the country. Another condition could be coming from the VVE. The VVE is the Common Owners Association. If you have a VVE, then it means you most probably have an apartment. And that sometimes the VVE has it as a regulation that you will never be able to rent the property. Maybe that is even written in the deed of 50 years ago, and it will still exist being in the deed of the next buyers to buy the house. So that is another restriction, let's say, that you will not be possible to rent. So it could come from certain sources. So just make sure you double check that.
Thank you. I have one question from Irving. In the example, leaving furniture behind, does that mean that the value of the furniture would also be taken into account in the value of the property?
Very nice question, creative. I like it. So what happens usually is that one of the documents of the property is a document called list of items. In those items, there's a lot of, it's a standard form, and there's just a tick box for the owner to indicate what they will leave behind, what they will take with them, and what they can offer for sale. Whatever they choose to leave behind, that is, of course, something that they don't want anything for. So things that they leave behind usually would be kitchen machinery, so oven, a fridge, a freezer. Those things are usually left behind, and yeah, they're not really calculated in the value of the house. Things that the owner chooses for sale. So, for example, they say, I want to sell the bed, I want to sell the couch, I want to sell the wardrobe. Then it is also worth looking at what kind of items those are, right? So, for example, if they're selling an IKEA desk that is just, a normal student cheap solution desk, then of course you will not really offer any money on that. You will just include that in the purchase price. But now if they're selling fine touch couches and dineries and things like that, then of course you should consider of perhaps offering a few money for that, because that is an investment they made. And if someone else offers money for them, then they will definitely go with the more money. But of course, the items are not calculated in the value of the house. The kitchen, of course, how functioning the kitchen is and how good it is in quality, then that is considered. But in general, the items are not in the value of the house, but important to consider when you're making an offer, because sometimes the owner might be seeking some money for it as well. Always depending on the item though, okay?
Thank you. I have a very good question from Natasha. How can renovation expenses be included into the loan? And is there a cap on that?
Okay, perfect. So the cap is your mortgage limit. So for example, let's say you can borrow 350. If you choose to take 320 out for the house, then you have another 30,000 that will allow you to make an extra loan for renovation costs. It works a little bit differently with the renovation costs. The main difference is that let's say the bank approves you for 20,000 on renovation costs. They will not give you that money as part of the purchase price. They will secure the money for you, and then once you start the renovations and you start paying what you need to pay, they will pay you back with proof. So of course you need to submit proof that you have made those expenses, and then they will give you the money for that. The mortgage advisor will be able to explain in detail how that will work. And then the way to add the renovation costs on the mortgage would be that you will need to generate a second evaluation report. One report will give the value of the house at the moment that it is right now, and then the second report will give a future evaluation based on the renovations that you want to make. So you as a buyer will be required to fill a list of renovations. Let's say, okay, so kitchen 5,000, bathroom 10,000, depending what you want to spend. Then that form is given to the evaluator. The evaluator is taking that into consideration, and then based on the renovations you want to make, they add the value. Keep in mind, not 100% of those costs will be added as a value, because the bank will only be looking to give money for things that actually improve the state of the house, right? So if you choose to remove the tiled floor just to add another tiled floor, and there's no a real upgrade except for an aesthetic one, then they won't really perhaps cover the whole cost of that. If you're replacing the kitchen to make it a better kitchen, then they'll provide money for that. Usually what they give is between 60 to 65% of the renovation cost that you indicate that you want to spend. Then they give around 65% of that costs. And you need to make sure that you tell the mortgage advisor that you want that, right? So we can communicate that there's a second report that needs to be made.
Good. We have another question, and it's another very good one. How does the buying situation or process change when you want to buy a home in one go? I believe she means on cash versus getting a mortgage.
Well, that automatically means that you don't need the mortgage, therefore no mortgage clause, which is a very good benefit. You have the cash, you will move forward with the property anyway. And the second thing is that you can also provide the 10% a lot quicker than the bank. The timing, although that is usually not an issue, to be honest, the bank timing will be around 5 weeks after the mortgage, 5 weeks after the offer gets accepted. But you, because you have the money, especially if you have it directly in the Netherlands already here, you can even give the deposit in a week. So that's just a benefit to you. Do keep in mind that the cash deposit of the 10% at the notary's account will start claiming negative interest. That is usually minus 0.5%, let's say. So it is not a lot. But if your transfer is in a year from that time, then you definitely don't want your 10% to be sitting for such a long time there. So the biggest benefit that you have is actually that you don't require a mortgage. Therefore, you don't require a mortgage clause, and that is one of the most powerful things that you can have in your offer.
Thank you. I have another question from Aditi. I am 29 years old, earn 4K per month net, first-time buyer, can arrange about 15 to 20K for savings. But the house that I like are almost above 400K. I do not see anything below that. How should I proceed?
Then in that case, you will need to manage a little bit the expectations. So you will need to sacrifice one or the other. It's either sacrificing the type of the house, What a lot of people do is that they say, okay, I cannot get a house with a garden, with a parking, and ready for me to move in. Sometimes they can't get that with what they have. So what they do is they choose to keep the garden, keep the parking, but there are some renovations that need to be done. And they add that as a renovation cost. The sacrifice there is that you need to invest a little bit more time and money for it. But of course, then you'll be able to get a house that meets your standard, even though it will need some work and love to get to the state that you wish. So you can compromise on that. Another thing to compromise is, of course, the location. The more far away you are from the popular and the center locations, the less competitive the market will get. So that is one of the other things you can do. And then the last thing you can do is, if you really don't want to be flexible with any of those kind of options, then your next option will be to just wait until you can have a higher mortgage. Although the risk there would be that if the interest rates go higher, then your mortgage capacity will go lower as well. And no one can guarantee the interest rates. So it is a little bit more of a personal decision. Personally, the best compromise that you can make is that you lower your standards a little bit about the finishing of the house. So don't expect to get the newest, the better, the most modern property. Compromise a little bit on the style. That will also compensate you on the price. And you can use that money that you would have instead needed to use in a competition for a very good house. You would use that money to probably change it and renovate it in the way that you want also. That is the best advice that I can give in that case.
Very good tips, Katie. Crystal asked, my daughter is in third year student in Den Hague. Will she qualify for a mortgage or must buy in cash?
That depends on her financing situation. There are no restrictions in the Netherlands for internationals and foreigners to buy. So even if you're not in the Netherlands, you can still buy a property. So whether she can qualify for a mortgage depends on what kind of job she's doing and what kind of income she has, or what kind of net worth. And then, of course, if you can't buy with a mortgage, then your next option will be to buy with cash savings. So the best thing to do again is check with the mortgage advisor whether you qualify or not for any mortgage amount, and then make a decision based on that.
Thank you. Lisa asked, will the house owner make check also, just one moment, also other information of future buyer or only the offer?
It would be nice if you could maybe point out what kind of other information you mean. But in general, what the owner's responsibility is to the future buyer is that they provide all the information related to the house directly to the buyer or the agent, depending, and that they're obligated to inform them about all the rules and regulations, any kind of changes, any kind of not changes, anything like that. They're obligated to provide you with previous deeds, energy labels, and all sorts of information. So that is obligated by the selling part. I guess that is perhaps what you need. But
just mention here the type of job, for instance. They would consider that as well.
They will be more interested to see whether you're represented by a mortgage advisor or not. So let's say hypothetically now you are, I don't know. I don't even know what a bad job is anymore. There's no bad job, but let's say you have something that is less stable than something else. So you're not a doctor, right? You're something else. They'll be more interested to see if you're represented by a mortgage advisor. Make sure you always point out that you are represented either from a mortgage advisor or from an agent. What we do personally for our clients is that we always attach the mortgage advisor information in the offer. to be honest, it's very rarely that the selling agent will reach out to them. But the fact that the information is there and is accessible to them gives them confidence that what we say is correct. So they'll be interested a little bit in your background, but the major decision maker would be what is your financing situation looking like, and how likely are you to go through the process or not.
Very clear, Katie. I have one last question from Irving. Are there statutory differences between buying in Rotterdam, The Hague, Utrecht, etc.? Or is the process the same for all the gemeentes in the Netherlands? Just market value different?
Yes, pretty much the same. There are, of course, different regulations in each city. So, for example, the self-application law will be different in Eindhoven than it is in Rotterdam. Amsterdam is a completely different market. So the steps are exactly the same, but the details and the way that a certain thing happens in the process is quite different. But of course, that is more related to your selling agent, right? So in your point of view, you will pretty much have the same experience everywhere. It's just the details might be different from city to city, of course.
We have two more questions.
Nice.
So Lisa is asking, can we stop a house going to Funda and make an offer before?
If you're lucky, yes. Some agents, so for example, we are buying agents, we don't do selling at the moment. So we don't have a special list of properties up for sale because we don't sell ourselves. But what we do have is a good connection with a lot of agents in a lot of cities. So what happens is that a lot of times they send us property. They've worked with us, of course, before. They know the quality of our work. They trust working with us. And then what they do is say, hey guys, we have these and these properties. Do you have anyone that is interested? So a lot of times we have that off-market information. But just to give a little bit of perspective here, 80% of the sales happen via Funda. So it is more or less likely that the property you're interested in, even if you see it off market, most probably 2-3 days down the line, it will end up being on Funda as well. So yeah, I hope that gives you a better perspective on it.
Thank you, Katie. Aditi wants to know if we cover Amsterdam as well.
Yeah, Amsterdam is actually the home base. That's where everything started, and we started expanding through there. If you are a smart package client, then to be honest, we'll be able to cover you everywhere. Anywhere you are, and even in the smallest place in the Netherlands, we'll be able to support you there as well. With the complete package, we can support in Groningen, Eindhoven, Utrecht, Maastricht, and of course areas in between, right? The Hague, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, so pretty much everywhere. But if you are a complete package, of course, we won't be able to travel 2 or 3 hours away for a viewing if you're too far away from the main city. That's the only thing you should consider. But for the rest, we do offer coverage in all of the Netherlands as well.
Thank you. I believe we cover all the questions now. If we miss something, please send us an email so we can reply to you directly later.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. I hope that this has been very informative for you. But do keep in mind there's a lot more to it. So if you have specific questions or need specific advice, just book a chat with us. Let's have a chat, meet each other. If there's anything else you need, then you can always reach out. We'll send the recording over to you, and we'll also send, you will also see a link there where you can directly book an intake with one of us, perhaps with me. So I'll be more than happy to have a one-on-one chat with you, meet you, and then see how we can support you. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Thanks a lot, Rafaela, for answering all these questions. And if there's anything we missed, just get in touch with us. We'll make sure we definitely answer that. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.